so that it will sync up across the board and I won't lose any of the ladies' emails out of the chapter email account. Because I pretty much email the ladies, and I'm sure Jessica's gotten one or two, and Donna, the Mountain Metro email, that's me, but for the chapter.
Gotcha.
So that can be a problem, but I mean, it's easily fixable. It just takes the time to do it.
That's weird.
And the
Because
patience.
you have it's not using your email address, right? You guys have a separate email address for Mountain Metro?
Right. Mountain Metro has their own email account. But because I have a personal email account at Gmail as well, it's linking everything up.
That's see, we have the same thing. We have Gmail for our chapter, and I have personal Gmail, and I have not had to put everybody's email addresses in my phone. It hasn't done that.
Well, at first it
weird.
kicked it totally kicked Kirsten out. And then I put her back in, and I went in last night to send out an email to the ladies about something that we're trying to do for one of the ladies' sons who's deployed overseas, trying to make snack box for them. And I went in and did my email in the top, because I don't care who has mine. And then I blind carbon copy or courtesy copy, whatever that is, everybody else. So hopefully it goes straight to their inbox, addressed to them, and not their junk box to everybody else. And it came up and said it was addressed to me and like 33 other women. I'm like, no, that's supposed to be closer to 60 other women. So I go in and look and realize that it's deleted, straight up deleted over half of the chapter's contacts out of the email. So I had to sit here and put them, and we're not talking newbies. We're talking, there was new ladies, and Claudette Burtz was one of them. And another one that's been there for a cool minute would have been Jan Stinnett. So, I mean, they've been in the chapter since long before I ever even thought about coming in. And so, yeah. Something
Yeah, I don't
to watch
know.
out for.
I don't know
And
where
they
you
were-
get help with that. That's
So
weird.
they were added to your Google contacts under your club's email address or Google account?
Yeah, and because somewhere in my settings, probably no, on my dingy blonde butt, it's set up to sync everything across the board. So I've just got to go in and put all of the Mountain Metro ladies in my phone and get that done and over with, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that will fix it. Because I got enough going on.
I wish I could help you. That's not happened to me. I've got my Gmail, and then Ambux has a Gmail, and both have stayed separate so far. And sounds like I'm very glad that's happened.
Yes. So it's all good. It's just another thing on the list, on the plate. It's all good.
Otherwise, as
sleep.
far as secretary, do you have any other questions in regards to secretary?
I'm pretty good. I mean, doing the secretarial work is as bad as it may sound, with me being the way I am, being me. Secretarial work is kind of my niche. The paperwork and the computer crap or computer stuff and all that. It's just, you see the ladies, they all bring their computers and their cell phones and everything to me almost every week. I broke my phone. So.
Well, but you ladies have done a really good job implementing Zoom and keeping your members engaged who can't come to regular meetings. Yeah, I think that's really strong. I mean, if you can't,
I suggested it
to come. Yeah,
I suggested it, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So,
I mean, Elaine, would anything like Zoom work at your meetings? Do you guys meet where you could do that?
Probably
Because
not.
I ask you because you've recently recruited a lot of younger members. So I
We
didn't know.
have. No, I don't think Zoom would really work very good in our meetings. It's a big room. And they actually have gambling machines on one side, so they sometimes interfere, but it'd be noisy.
But you usually have a decent amount of people that show up at your meetings too, don't you?
Oh, yeah, we run about 15 to 20 people.
Yeah, for your group, that's good.
Yes.
Brenda, do you have any
Did you wanna
needs in
butt
your
in?
particular office? So Elaine, do you have any particular questions on a particular office?
I'm the treasurer and I've probably been it way too long. I've been it since like 2011. I really don't have any questions on it. It's just do it. I worked in accounting, so it's pretty easy. Larry wants to say hi.
She's very busy doing it all the time.
You're
Just
looking
so you
good,
know.
Larry.
Of course, I'm feeling fine too.
Good.
Everything's just
Good.
okay.
He couldn't
And-
help himself.
I didn't have any questions.
Okay. So does anybody in other chapters around y'all or anybody in your chapter have a particular question about a particular office? I think a lot of times people just get afraid of the unknown, or if they didn't have a good person to follow, they may not know what is good to follow. I think that's where we see some things kind of go a little bit sideways.
I think the other thing that I get asked, and gosh, I probably wouldn't mind some advice on the subject, is we've got these people who've been doing the officer positions for years and years and years. And it's how do you find that replacement? I mean, how do you just go to somebody and say, oh, it's yours now? And for somebody like Elaine, who has treasury experience, and that's her background, I imagine it's very hard to find someone who's even willing to take that on because they feel like they're not going to do it as good as Elaine does it.
I will say with ours, the lady before that did it had been in it probably 15 years. And then a couple of people tried to do it. And finally they just said, here, you do it.
We've recently had, like you said, Jessica, some discussion, should there be term limits? And I get that there probably should, but again, you get into some positions in the chapter and nobody else wants it.
Yes.
Well, and I think,
That's secretary.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's because you work so hard. It looks difficult. And some of you are serving on board positions and you've obviously made somebody else take it. Like, how'd you do that? Was it just,
One of the things we did at Grapevine here, just because we had that problem and, you get to the point where it's the same people where we started rotating, like what positions we did. So we didn't always have the same position. But we really, there was a time when there was newer people, and I want to say the long-term people longer, but we set it up where there was two for a while, right? Because we did it as a training, like you're in training in 1 year, so you're learning the role. So it really had two people. So, but one was just the person who had been doing it, they were really an advisor. So we allowed the new person to vote and all that good stuff from a board perspective. But the other one was an advisor, where a mentor, where we had them meet with them, walk them through, meet monthly, go through the books. They could ask any questions they wanted until they felt comfortable.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That way they don't feel so overwhelmed if they're thrown in that position
Right. It's not like you're just saying, hey, it's yours, right? We will guide you and walk you through each step of the process until you feel comfortable. When you feel comfortable, then we will back off being your, advisor, mentor, trainer, whatever you want to call them.
That's what Linda is doing with me for car show chair. Is I'm following her, shadowing her for this next year's car show, and then after that is I'll kind of be sliding over, but she'll
Yeah, I
still
think that-
have a big hand in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that works well for fundraisers too. If you're having struggles getting project managers for a fundraiser, sort of like your president-elect, right? You're supposed to be training them for when they're president, so they're practicing doing, leading the meetings, leading meetings before they're actually president. So
That's a good idea. I like that about the fundraisers too, because that's where a lot of times we can't get somebody to take over the fundraiser
There's a lot of
because
work.
Linda Mask has been doing it all these years.
Yeah.
And so everybody's like, oh, I don't want to get in there and mess it up, right? So that mentoring there for a year with her right by your side, she can still have you do a lot of it, but she's still right at your hip that can really help you out. That's a good idea. I like that.
Or you have co-chairs, right, for fundraisers, so it's not just one person, so they're not feel like it's all on them.
Right. We had that before, but because when award time comes around and you're trying to pick your project manager, you
Harder.
have co-chairs. They were both great. How would who are you going to pick and who are you going to possibly hurt? You know, because if they both felt that they did a phenomenal job, then they're both going to feel like they should get acknowledged. So that's why we decided that we were going to have a chair, an assistant chair. That way it doesn't interfere when it comes time to do the awards, because you can acknowledge every project manager you have all year long on a chapter level. But when you get up to national, that's a whole different ball of wax.
Right.
I'm shutting up now.
No, that's a good point to make because you can. It's like
It
on
is a-
anything.
Hard decision, right?
We've
Like
got
if you make-
some long time chapter secretaries in the group. And Elaine, I know you're treasurer, but you've done some kind of secretarial management duties. How have you guys been adjusting to the change from it doesn't have to be reported quarterly, it's now reported whenever you want to? Has that been challenging to develop a new way of doing it? Do you like it better? Are you still doing it quarterly?
It's kind of the what are they called? Activity reports. I did those when I was secretary for Great Plains chapter, but being in Mountain Metro, the points keeper or the chairwoman of the board usually
Gotcha.
does that. But seeing as I'm pretty much the computer person, I'll be helping Kirsten with that this year because she doesn't do very much on computers. But the deal that we have is if we don't have our points in at a certain time, we have somebody that comes up and goes, where's your points at? Why aren't your points in? Yeah, I know y'all got stuff going on. I know y'all are doing stuff. So-and-so chapters is at this number and y'all are only at this number. Why aren't your points in? The ladies, for some reason, I'm not sure why, they like to do it at the end of the year. I don't know what to tell you. So it's kind of nerve-wracking when you got somebody coming up and doing that and you just want to go, I'm not the person to ask. I'm not the one in charge of that. Go talk to that person.
I think it's tricky, right? Because there's so many people who can be empowered to do it now, but then there's some of us who think, well, it's the old way. I met with a chapter who they firmly believed that was the president's job to report all the activities. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't have to be anymore. It's
Right.
not a form. It doesn't have to be one person who does it. But what's exactly the sweet spot? You know, what's that new formula of getting everything reported? I don't really know. Donna, you got any advice for doing chapter reporting? I feel like
Well,
you guys do it when it happens.
Yeah, but mostly Wendy and I have been doing it. We've had a couple other people. When I've been talking to different chapters, I've been encouraging the chapters to make their committee chairs or their activity chairs administrators on there so they can all spread it around. So it's a lot if one person, if you have a real active chapter, that's a lot of work for one person to put in all that information. So, but it's a lot easier to put it in on a regular basis versus even quarterly, because you can remember everything. Wendy and I usually both, she does the Amtrikes and helps with the other areas. And usually as soon as something happens within a day or two, we put it in there before we forget about it. I'd like to hear from Elaine. I know Elaine's doing a lot of it. I want to hear what
I do a
Elaine's
lot
doing.
of it, but Sally, our secretary, she does some things. And then Larry was president last year, and I told him he was I told the president this year, they're in charge of their meetings, doing all their meetings. And if they have anything special, they need to put it in. We kind of coordinated. Keith Jameson's our president this year, and he hasn't signed on yet, but he's going to in the next week or so. So that's how
good.
we do it.
Do you like it better this way or with the old, quarterly scorecard?
I like it better this way, because of the other scorecard, there was a lot of stuff we didn't know about by the time it got to national and now we can put stuff in and it's I think it's easier to understand.
I think it's a great tool to have during board meetings. You sit down with it, you have a laptop with you, you open it up. You've got your national news right there in front of you, so you don't forget things that may have been sent over email. You can look and see like, okay, here's this month's chapter chat. Here's something about Amtrak stocks that we need to let our therapists and, our families be aware of and things like that. We've got national conference that we need to push. And then you can also look ahead to what needs to be scored. Go ahead and do your scoring right there, or assign somebody from a committee to go ahead and do it. I mean, that's kind of the way we're treating it.
Yeah, I agree. We kind of use it the same way. It's a planning device, right? Where you use it in the beginning of the year to plan what you want to do. I know we kind of do everything, but it's like, how much more do we want to do, right? How many more Amtrak's do we want to do? How much more scholarships? And then we plan out our quarterly and we review it each month to see if we're making our goals based off what. So, it's really for us a goal setting of, look at all the things they recommend we can do, or what we can, possibilities. Obviously we can do other things, but it's a good guideline to start, especially for new chapters and existing, to say, here's what you should do look at it, plan your calendar out, plan out when you want to give out your Amtrak's, when you want to do your community service, and then review it at each meeting. So it's a good guideline to use.
Well, Matt, I like that idea too, because a lot of these chapters I visited with that don't have weekly or even monthly meetings. Basically, they meet as they see a desire to meet, Amtrak giveaway or something. But they tend to always have a board meeting. A lot of them do. And that would be at least a guideline, like you said, for them to use at that board meeting. And especially when you said you bring up national news, you bring up the chapter chat, you bring all that up. They're going over everything that's happening on a national level. So that's something I think definitely, even at conference, if we can try to push these smaller chapters, especially too, to use that as a great way to conduct their board meeting. At least they're looking at it once a month.
Yep, agreed.
I like that.
Yeah, and Larry taught me a really nice trick that would save a lot of times when they're entering the meeting information. Most of the time when those are already scheduled out for the year, so you can go ahead and put those dates already in there. Then you can go back and put in how many people were at it. If something changes, you can go change, but at least if nothing else, it's automatically done, because it doesn't score until that date comes around. We do that with the Amtrak's too. When Wendy orders Amtrak's, or when she did, she's not in ability chair anymore. She's training somebody new. But when she orders them, she goes ahead and puts them right in the hub when she orders them, and puts like a 2099 year on it. And then she can keep track of who's ordered and what it is. Helps me as treasurer, because if I get an invoice, I can go into the hub and go, yep, we ordered this one and it's here now, I'll pay it. So that's been helpful too, a lot. Otherwise, treasurer doesn't always know what the ability chair has ordered.
Right. We
Oh,
have a
that's-
tracking spreadsheet that we use that's really detailed, like what we ordered, when it's coming and when we give it to and I know for us, Diane kind of keeps track of the scorecard stuff for us. So, or the points, and she adds it all in there and kind of reaches out and does all the coordination to get to the information. But yeah,
Also on
that is helpful.
also on secretarial, you can put the board meetings, the
Yep.
monthly board meetings.
And
'Cause if
can
you have
make
them
an
on
an
a-
attachment to your scoring category.
Yeah, because if you have them set for a certain day of the month, every month steadily, you can just go, okay, first Tuesday of the month, board meeting, board meeting,
Yep.
board meeting, and there you go. And if
Yeah.
you have to move it due to lovely Mother Nature or something happens, then you just go in and switch the date and you're done.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah, it's already done. You don't have to do that work over again.
And that's really, really important. One thing that we do need to encourage chapters, because if IRS ever comes in, they want to see those board minutes. And if we're just, somebody's got it, let's say they're no longer a member, they were on their computer, et cetera. Now we don't have them. Not everybody kept copies of them. So those things like that are really important in case you have change of membership, et cetera. It's still there.
So Kathleen's joined. Hey, Kathleen.
Hey,
Yay.
Kathleen.
So Kathleen, you're free to ask any questions or give any helpful feedback for officers if at any point it moves you.
When we were talking about, officers, secretary and treasurer staying on for so long, it amazes me all these chapters that have had the same secretary for so many years, because we have a hard time getting them. And I think we have a good one this year, and she's going to be good. But we've had several, like, came first meeting, never saw them after that, and it's just like, it's been hard on us, which makes it really hard when we don't have somebody taking minutes. And, but we have kind of a mess right now because nobody took very good minutes when we elected our two new board members. And now we're having to go back and redo it because we don't have minutes. So I don't know. I guess that's probably why when you get a good officer that you keep them for so long, because those secretary and treasurer are very important jobs. And a lot of you know that we had a treasurer between me and had over $13,000 embezzled from us and no bills paid. And so our chapter is kind of leery about replacing the treasurer too. So I'm amazed at those of you that have good secretaries and can keep them.
How many of you are collecting membership applications on a paper application form? Like, how are you getting your new people?
I've got a folder that I keep the new member applications in sheet protectors, and every year I've started when it was Priscilla's second year. So I've got Priscilla's year and it's binder clipped. I've got Amy's year, binder clipped. I've got Kirsten's year, binder clipped. So, or no, I started Amy's year, I'm sorry. So I've got the last 3 years, they're all binder clipped by year, and I can go back and look when they started. I can go back and look and see how many Wendy has for our rebig hat, if how many more she needs, or if she needs to start from scratch, all of that good stuff. So that's why I keep them. And I make sure everybody gets a copy of it that needs it on the board.
Yeah. Does that process work pretty well for you guys? Is it labor intensive to have to type all that information back in?
I mean,
I'd love
I
to
just,
make it easier. I just don't know how we do that without removing the chapter's ability to approve a member. You
right.
know, like if we were to just make it an electronic form that came direct to us, I don't know how we do that and have the chapter input.
I don't think you can go to just
I
that
don't think you
because,
can.
you recruit people everywhere and
Mhm.
look at Wendy Bond. I've seen her sign up people in an elevator. And even though we can kind of get on the hub on our phones, sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. If you're just electronic, it may stifle our registration process.
Yeah.
In our chapter, I have printed forms in our box, in my folder. We always have them with our events, so we always have one. And then we bring it back and our membership chair enters them and I get a copy. I said, I don't need the original, but as treasurer, I need that information too, so I can put it in QuickBooks and send invoices
Yeah.
out.
Well, and
That
you're going to
makes-
get a bill from us and need to know that it's correct.
Right.
And if it's
I-
just, and if it's just entered electronically in an elevator per se, or wherever, as treasurer, I don't see that information.
Right.
And I don't have that information till I get a bill, and then I'd have to go through the hub roster and try to figure out who that new person and all their information is. So I think we need both. The electronic is really handy. And of course, that's what we're doing on the hub.
I make sure that, of course, I've got a copy, the president has a copy. The treasurer of course, and the newsletter person has a copy and the vice president, if she wants one. That way everybody has their email, their contact info, their name, all that good stuff. So that's how I do it. Sometimes I'll screenshot it because on my phone, it has the ability to do like a scan document thing. And I do that and I'll either email it or text it to them. I'll be like, this is our new member that we voted on last night. They just got put in the system. So here's your info.
I've just always, and I know many of us are, trying to think of ways to make the chapter experience easier. And so if there's ways that we can make your officer positions easier, we certainly would want to do that because it's going to make it easier for you to find people to do the jobs. But as Donna hinted to, it might be hard to find the people who are going to do the level that you need it to be. And that's where I really like Jean's idea of having like a mentor sort of role for officer positions. You could even have two people taking the notes for the minutes, and then the person who's doing the mentoring could say, hey, you really needed to be sure to catch this.
The one thing I do for my minutes is I record. I have a tablet. I have a recording app on there. I record every stinking single board meeting. And when I was big hat secretary, I recorded all of those too. That way I can go back and listen to what was said and not have to worry about missing anything. And, cause they talk faster than I can write, and that ain't gonna happen. So I started recording them. I just figured it was easiest and best.
Kathleen, do you have some comments? Because we see you back there. Do you have questions or comments you want to make?
No, I just really wanted to learn, and I'm sorry I signed in late, but I had to work late today. So the more I learn about what the officers do, the better I can support them.
Do you have any interest in being in an officer position?
Well, that depends on which club, which Ambux group I'm going to be an officer in. Right now we're the house divided between Duncan and Great Plains. I actually would like to maybe next year think about being the big hat president for Great Plains and trying to get them more involved in doing things.
I think you would be great at that, Kathleen. Your attention to visibility and recruitment is very strong. you should consider that.
Big Hat President is a blast.
Yeah. Well, you got a national big hat president on here and a black hatter. You got any specific questions about that role?
I'll be honest, our big hatters do stuff during the meetings, but as far as doing anything outside of the meetings, that just doesn't happen. And I made the suggestion, maybe the big hatters should run the monthly social. And I was told that if the big hatters ran it, it was only for big hat people and they couldn't run a social for the rest of the group. So how do you get them involved? How do you get them started doing more things?
You can do each chapter does what they want to do. Some chapters, if they have a non-big hatter that wants to come to an event, let's say you had a big hat social and you want to allow non-big hatters, you can, but maybe they get hot dogs and not hamburgers or steak, or they have to pay $10 to come to that social and the other ones get to be part of it. So you, as your chapter, whatever chapter you're in, can actually make the rules or go how you guys and how it fits you. Somehow you want it to be where the big hatters feel important and it's special and a privilege to be in that, but yet you don't totally snub out or exclude those that may want to see what it's about. So it's kind of like a teaser type of deal, but that's up to your chapter. Every chapter is a little bit different.
Okay.
Yeah, and another thing on that is Big Hat is kind of like the honor society within the clubs, but you can also focus on other stuff, whereas AmBucks is the focus is on the mission and the Amtrak's and the scholarships and stuff like that. Big Hatters can focus on Humane Society. They can focus on their local food bank. They can focus on assisted living center, finding things that the assisted living center might be low on, the bathroom stuff for the veterans, stuff like that. You can widen what focus that the Big Hat chapter or the Big Hat group in your chapter can focus on. You can, still help with the chapter stuff and donate with them or whatever, but the Big Hatters can widen their focus and explore so much more.
Okay. So getting involved with Special Olympics or supporting the People's First State group in Oklahoma would be things that I could maybe get them interested in.
Very possible, yes. Go for it.
Okay.
Kathleen, I think you've got the ability to come in and break the mold and just make it what it needs to be for your group. And you've earned the respect to where I think if you shake it up a little bit, people aren't going to be too bothered by that. It's kind of like when Wendy Bond shakes it up a little bit, people give her a pass.
Make it yours, Kathleen. That's the best thing we can tell you. Make it your Big Hat chapter year.
Exactly. And other chapters will sit there and say, oh, Kathleen shouldn't be doing that, but other chapters do it too. So again, it is what you want it to make it do. And make it fun and make it where, it works for y'all.
Well, and if it increases your visibility and your mission outreach, or it recruits members, at the end of the day, people aren't going to complain about that.
And that makes sense. I just, when you look at Great Plains and they almost died several years ago and now it's up and functioning, but I really want, being a new Big Hat in the last year, I really want them to do more. Even if it's a social once a month or cornhole or a pool tournament or whatever, But yeah, I think that would help with recruitment and retention, because the other members will see we're doing something fun, and Ambucks is fun.
Even if you can't do it monthly, I think that like our chapter usually does quarterly, but we've gotten to where we have so many new members and they like to do the social events that we're doing the social events every month. But even quarterly, Kathleen, is huge for you guys because you're not currently doing it. So if you introduce something and you're just doing it even quarterly, it will be a big step.
Okay, that's a good idea.
And the first couple of times, you know, you could do like a really special dinner at like Texas Roadhouse, and just for the big hatters. And maybe, you know, go back to club the next Monday and just brag all about it, and everybody be like, wait a minute, I wanted to go there. So either
Well,
way.
and I like what Mountain Metro does as far as posting the stuff that your Big Cat group is doing. And I think
Thank you.
that's a good way to get people interested is you're posting your big cats are having parties. Gosh, I want to be a part of that.
Well, the ladies definitely do love to party. I will give them that. It's going to be very interesting in the hospitality suite, let me tell you. So, but we will have a blast doing it either way. But yeah, we just have fun with it and we just make it our own. And if it's what another chapter wants to do, go for it, have at it. And if you don't like it and you don't want to do it, then move on your own and go for it.
That sounds good. I appreciate the support and the advice.
Hey, Miss Judith, we see you and Gary on here. Sorry, and James, sorry, our times were a little bit off a little bit. So let's go and ask either one of you, Judith, if you've got a particular question that you have in regards to an office, because we've been talking for a while, so we don't want to necessarily repeat something we've said, but we sure want to answer your questions.
If you have any, are any of you currently serving in office, or do you want to give your sights on a certain role?
That can be Gary, Judith, James, any of y'all? Go for it, Gary.
If you become the project manager, you don't have to worry about being an officer.
So is that what you're saying, is that as long as you can stay the project manager or something, then you're clear?
Exactly.
Well, that might work for y'all. Some places they're gonna have to be the project manager and the secretary, treasurer, president, but if that works, that's good.
I need to pick on James a little bit because I know him really, really well. He's in the Owasso chapter and he is on my motorcycle rally committee member. And Melissa has put a little bit of, not a lot of pressure, but recruited him. And I think she's pushing him to try to get him to get into future leader position. So James, I'm glad you're on here.
I'm on.
You're just hiding.
I'm taking it all in.
He's a very hard worker and he has really stepped up into the chapter already.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's already pushed me. Then I'm just about ready to become in to be the president, I think.
Good.
Good.
If you're a hard worker in a smaller group, you're gonna be the target, James.
I'm always the target. You don't know me very well. You can ask Donna, I'm always the target.
Because he's a good guy.
One of the things we were talking about, and this might help Judith and James as well, is that if the person that's in a position now can mentor you and be like the advisor and you're in a training role for even if it's just for a month or two until you feel comfortable, that might make that jump into that position a little bit easier if that person would do that. Even Christina was telling us about how even a chair over a project, be in there as the assistant chair while the chairman is training you. So then when you come in as the chair, you felt more comfortable and don't feel like it's just being thrown at you.
Yeah. Now, I do have a question. Why do we change officers every year instead of every 2 years? Because I mean, by the time somebody gets a rolling, you're already moving out of the office.
Not a terrible question. We've got actually some chapters who've modified their bylaws so that it's a 2-year rotation. Especially some of we've got some really small groups, James, that can charter with 5 members. And so if you're requiring 3 of those are officers, there's not too many people to rotate those positions. And so I can think of one in North Dakota. They actually said, well, until we can grow, we're going to keep people in office for 2-year terms. It's not a terrible idea, especially if you want to do that mentorship route where you're teaching someone maybe that 2nd year or mentoring them to take over. I think it could work.
They could also, Jessica, couldn't they, instead of messing with their bylaws, just kind of reelect everybody in the same position again
and just know that that's how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
That's what we've done in a lot of our positions is if there wasn't somebody else, we just reelected them. And I've been reelected as treasurer forever and ever. So there you go. But even our president, we've done that too. It's just reelected him another year. So you can definitely do that.
You voluntold them, right?
In Mountain Metro, we the president or the incoming president asks who they would like to be on their board, or they give a list of names to past chapter presidents, and they say this is who we would like to be on our board, and then the past presidents will be like, okay, yeah, but we think this lady might work better with this group than what this one would, so forth or so on. And for some reason, they all seem to like me as secretary. So here I am 3 years later, loving it. So, it's whatever is going to work for each chapter, whether you're voted in, voluntold, or, if you weren't there and you get the call of, hey, congratulations, secretary. And you're like, no, I'm not the secretary. Well, you weren't at the meeting. So guess what? However you want it. Yeah, voluntold, totally. So it's to each their own, and it's whatever works.
But you're right, James. It does take it because by the time you get 1 year going, you just learning the position, you start feeling comfortable, then your turn's up. So I think that's a great point to make, that either change your bylaws or just ask to be re-elected.
Yeah.
I've heard that a lot though, James. I've heard of presidents at the end of the year saying, man, I'm just now getting the hang of this and it's over. I haven't heard of too many asking to be president again, but I agree with Jessica though, with small chapters like yours is, I don't know how many members you have now, but active members that you can draw officers from is pretty limited. And so you really don't have people going up like where my chapter, we know we have, our vice president's going to go up to, our secretary is supposed to go up to vice president, hasn't happened for years, but then our vice president goes up to president. So they're kind of learning as their vice president. But I think when you become president, if you want to do it for 2 or 3 years, I bet it could happen.
I bet somebody could arrange that, huh?
Well, Wendy's also in your chapter and she's on this listening to you, so she can make it happen too.
Don't listen, Wendy.
Too late, James. She heard it. She's nodding. I don't hate that graduated system of come in as an officer, rotate to the next one, rotate to the next one, rotate to the next one. I just think sometimes it might be easier to find certain skill sets that will do better in particular offices. Because we've mentioned with secretary, attention to detail might be strong. We definitely know that that's the case for treasurer, but I don't hate that someone who becomes president, who becomes the leader of the group, knows what the responsibilities of their officers are because they've done it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and here's a kicker. Don't think that you can do one office and give up the other one, because it don't always work that way. You can be president and secretary at the same cotton picking time. Been there, done that.
It happens sometimes, but it shouldn't, especially if you have a lot of members, because you need to groom your future leaders of your chapter. And the secretary is an easy spot to put them in. I say that I've never was officially secretary of our chapter. I don't like taking minutes because I can't write and pay attention and read them later. But there were a couple of years where when I was treasurer, I had to do notes because our secretary quit. But yeah,
I wasn't even ready to be president that year. I was nowhere near ready to be president of a chapter. And nobody could take secretary, and it was Vic's year as national president. And I said to myself, I can't let the chapter fold on his year as national president. I can't do that. I work for the guy, for crying out loud. I cannot do that. So that's why I stepped up and to be the president that year, and nobody could take secretary. So I kept secretary too, and just did it both that year and just made it happen. It was just one of those pull up your bootstraps and get the damn work done and suck it up, buttercup. So it was just a deal that had to be done, and I did it. So
I feel like sometimes these offices do have some overlap. And do any of you struggle to find that line? The president and secretary work so closely to install and welcome new members. Or sometimes you got chapters where they're doing secretary and treasurer. I forget, Donna, that you've never done secretary all the time, because I just feel like you've been so involved with that new member process and rosters.
I was membership chair for years and had a really good active committee. So I was active in that part, doing orientations and that. And then when we had those secretaries quit, which we did, we had like 4 years in a row. It was crazy that they would, get elected, come to a meeting or two, and then disappear. And we couldn't get anybody to step up. And so I didn't take minutes all the time, but it was just easier for me as treasurer to enter the membership information and do that part. And I still do. I try to coordinate it. We've now changed it because it kind of goes back to learning the jobs. About 3 years ago, we kind of unofficially made the vice president the membership chair, so they could kind of learn how to do stuff, at least enter the information. And so far, it really hasn't taken off, though our vice president right now entered one of our new members and figured that out. So we kind of have a new process in place that we'll see how, hopefully that'll work. But you're right. A lot of times the officers all work and do a little bit of each other's jobs too sometimes.
Is there ever any challenges there? I mean, so many of you are part of chapters that have been around for a long time. James, I think Owasso was 2014, so it's starting to get to be about a decade. Judith, though, she's brand new, so they're really having to define roles and responsibilities. But for the long-time chapters, are you ever stepping on each other's toes? Or are you just picking up what needs to be done and getting it done?
I don't think you call it necessarily stepping on each other's toes, but do we crisscross them? Yes.
Yeah.
And then you did, and that depends on who is your officers, because if you get a new one coming in, but yet let's say I'm still the treasurer, you have a new secretary, then that person may assume X amount and you kind of learn, okay, wait, that's what I've been doing, but you want to do it, here you go. And I think it's just a matter of meshing and working with each other. And the same
Yeah.
with president roles too, right? Our secretary
Absolutely.
last year thought it was her duty to make sure she gave an agenda to the president every meeting and every board meeting and had the agenda tied up. Where this year the president says, that's, I'm coming up with the agenda I'm making. And that's okay. We have to learn again, like we talked about
Yeah.
the Big Cat president and your chapter, whatever works for your chapter and the officers that you have.
I think communication's the biggest thing, and that early in the year, the board really needs to sit down and kind of talk about whose roles are doing what. And I actually sat down with the vice president a couple weeks ago, who's our membership chair, and said, okay, you let me know what you need help with. This is what we need to do. And she took notes of the process. And I said, I just want a copy of it. And so I can keep track of the billing. And I reached out to her today because I had a member that's a third member for a new girl that's going to conference and wants to get the big hat ordered. And I sent a picture, and well, she already had the form, but I sent our vice president membership chair a text and said, okay, I got the money. We really need to get this in today if possible. Are you able to do this, or would you like me to do it? And she came back, and because I offered, and she came back and said, yeah, please go ahead and do it. And she goes, I did enter the other one and I didn't have any problems. So the communication, I think, is the biggest key. So you're not stepping on each other's toes, or they don't think that you're trying to do their job, but offer to help, because some of them do. Last year, our vice president, at her job, she was building a house and doing this, and she didn't have time. And I offered, and she said, yeah, please, if you can do those. So hopefully I won't have to help as much this year. I don't think I will, but.
To maintain those strong board relationships, do you feel like that communication needs to happen ongoing, or are most of you just talking the once a month board meeting? How are you keeping it rolling?
Sometimes I talk to Trudy, who's our treasurer this year. I talk to Tony almost weekly, sometimes multiple times a week. When Kirsten was president last year, she would call on Monday and we'd be sitting here having a conversation while Curtis is off on Sundays and Mondays. And she kept thanking him for letting me talk with her for like 30 minutes to an hour some days about what we needed to do for the next day's meeting and everything. So it just depends on who and what position, in my opinion.
Did any of you receive officer training at the chapter level? Kind of, sort of. I was just wondering, is that effective? And it sounds like it is, because you're saying make the positions what they need to be, and we can give you parameters. Of course, we've got some great resources in the hub. We've got written guides, we've got video guides, but it sounds like there might need to be a little bit of training at the chapter level, because what a secretary does might be different from chapter to chapter.
Yeah, and I think that's true even on the president, like you said, and the treasurer and everything, because some people, they have their treasurer do all the accounting and the 990, et cetera, and some actually outsource that.
Yeah.
So it's whatever works for them. And the president, the same. Are they conducting the meeting, but they're doing this, this, and this, and what part did they have? Yeah, I agree. And again, those that just gone on here too, we do have some great resources. And like Jessica said, we have the slides, we have the videos, we have that information out there on the hub and all that, definitely take the time to at least look at those. That gives you a little bit of guideline, but you don't want it too long in a book or this 2-hour movie that you're not going to listen to past 5 minutes. So it is short, but it's enough to kind of give you a general idea. And then you go and ask others, whether it's in your chapter or another chapter or a regional director or even on the national level. But again, every chapter is going to do it a little bit different. So keep that in mind.
Also, you could kind of do I know every chapter is supposed to do an orientation once a quarter, but you could also do in either just in the beginning of the year or another special meeting for the quarters, whatever, but do kind of like an officer committee orientation. Go over what each officer's position is. Go, and if you have somebody in that position, tell them to give about a 2-3 minute talk about what their position is or how they works best for them. Committee chairs, what the committees would be, what committee chairs positions and all that good stuff, you know. And you may have to make it into a social because it may take longer than the hour lunch that you have, or dinner, whatever. You know, it's just thinking outside of the box on how it's going to work best for you, whether it's a video, whether it's a Zoom meeting, whether it's in person or whatever. That was one of the biggest things I had to learn when I was district trainer in Boy Scouts, was how was I going to get all these people trained? Because I got people that don't want to come to the office for training. So fine, I brought the molehill or the mountain to Muhammad. I went to their units and I did training. And that's how we had almost a 93 or 95% trained leader percentage in the district for a couple of years. You know, you just have to think outside of the box and go with what's going to work best for your chapter.
I think what's really worked well in our chapter most years, we haven't done it yet this year, but we do get our board together for not a regular board meeting, but usually sometimes it's dinner. We talked about having a board retreat, but never could find a date where we all could get together. We were going to go out to Lake Ponca to a cabin and socialize too. But the most important thing is to try to get your board together sometime at the beginning of the year, talk about different roles, who's doing what's, like I talked about, but then also kind of make a plan, look at the calendar, what you guys have done, what you normally have done, and budget. We talk about our budget then, look at it and approve it, see if anybody wants to add or subtract anything, and just have a little bit of fun. And so you kind of some icebreaker too, and get to know each other, because maybe those officers haven't all been together and done stuff. So they need to be able to feel comfortable where they can just pick up the phone and talk to each other and keep in communication.
I love the idea of a little board retreat or board orientation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then also I think on that board orientation, or if you did a little bit in the new member orientation, you know, if anybody was thinking about a position, if they wanted to show up and just listen to what some of those positions are, that way they aren't feeling like, oh, I never want to be secretary, I never want to be treasurer, I never want to be president, because they're scared of it. But if they can see you talk about it on a social type level and not so serious about it, yeah, I think then you might have some potential new officers that would be really interested in the future. Maybe not right then, but it might get their wheels thinking.
Very good insight.
Hey, Judith, we still haven't heard much from you. Do you have any particular questions?
You muted yourself, Miss Judith.
Oh, I'm just soaking it all in. I'm trying to get used to the screen too, so I apologize, but I'm just listening and taking notes.
I think that one of the biggest things on the treasurer's job is making sure that 990 gets filed. If they don't know how to do it, or if they're concerned with it, definitely that we want them to reach out to another chapter or CPA or somebody. That never hesitate to reach out. That's, I think, the biggest thing on anything is if you're concerned about something, reach out to somebody. Secretary, like you said, Christina said earlier too, make sure that you have your meeting notes. Keeping good records of that is tremendously important, especially for decisions and voting. It's like Donna said earlier, trying to figure out who voted for what later or after fact is not good. President is basically running the meeting. but again, can ask a lot of different people to assist that person throughout the meeting, however they want to do that, or ask their committee chair and their officers to give reports.
Also, Miss Carmelo, don't mean to interrupt you. I have, I made up over the years, sorry, my own templates for the agenda for a board meeting, the agenda for the weekly meeting, board minutes template, big hat minutes template, big hat agenda template. That way, you know, you have those and you don't have to go back every month and recreate your basic information. At the top, I put the board members that are there, and then I put a space for guests that show up at the board meeting. I put the secretary's report. I put treasurer, new people, any deletions that we need to work on, all that good stuff. So, and then I start with the committees and so forth. So that way you don't have to go back every month and recreate just your base information. It helps a lot.
We even made it simpler in our chapter. Wendy and I both, when we've had to take notes for the chapter, we just took the agenda and, you know, put right in the agenda what happened, who was there, and then, you know, new business, talked about this. So-and-so, the motion was made by so-and-so, second, passed. Because you don't need all that discussion and all that other stuff. You need to know who was there, if you had a quorum, what was voted on, and then you have the basics. But it made it easy because it was already on the agenda, so we didn't have to type much because most of it was already written there on the agenda. Excuse me.
And that makes it easier when you're the president and the secretary. Or you're told, hey, I can't be at the meeting and nobody else can be there. So, hey, Wendy, I need you to run the meeting. And I haven't run a meeting for, I don't know. And then I find out when I'm there that I have to be the secretary too. So I just took my own notes, went back to the computer and typed it all on the agenda in red. So everybody knew what was the agenda and what's really the minutes. So I think the other thing that's really important with training your new people, especially if they're new to AMBUCS, is and I still think that it's something that we need to do as AMBUCS is mentor these people, because you really do need to replace yourself, because eventually we're going to be gone and somebody else needs to do this. So especially the younger people, we really need to mentor them, jump in and be their friend, and act just as silly as they do and have fun with them, but also show them. And if they do something wrong or something, how, you know, that's out of the ordinary, like not what we typically do, I think that it's, if you have that working really good relationship with them, they don't get offended, and it's something that you know you can just call them and go, hey, at today's meeting, you know, you really need to keep Robert's rules in mind, you know, that kind of thing. Just, I think the relationship with your new people is really, really important.
That's a good point. And like I said, otherwise, if they feel like you're jumping on them, they're not going to want to do it again. And then we scare them off. And they may have some great ideas too. And we always have to be open to those other ideas too, because we had great ideas one time too.
And I think sometimes it's hard when you're a small chapter not to put those new people in a leadership position really quick. But experience has shown in our chapter, when we've put them in a secretary, you know, their first 6 months after joining the chapter, they have no idea what they're getting into. And then they just quit the chapter because they don't want to say, oh, I'm not ready for this. So I think you need to be really careful and not just shove these people into an officer position, get them involved in a fund committee chair, this chair, or co-chairing an event, but mentor them and work on them as potential leaders.
So
I was glad to hear the idea with a small chapter, like, for example, Duncan. I think they would probably benefit from keeping their same officers for a couple years so that we can get people from the community involved, but not burn them out by throwing them into an officer position too quickly. So that's one thing that I learned from this session, that might be a good thing to keep our current officers for another year.
Definitely. And that's very true, Kathleen, on a small chapter, like you said, because that experience means a lot. And again, you throw somebody in who, like Donna said too, if you really don't understand AMBUCS all the way, but you just came in and you know, oh, we give away trice, we do scholarships or AMs, but boom, you throw them into officer position. One, some people are very shy and that just makes them nervous. But two, if they've never been in that position, or even that position, even at work or a business, then it is scary to them. And then you're running them off when maybe we could keep them and mentor them into a great officer. And as we said earlier too, again, every chapter is a little different. So if somebody wants to do their officers a tad different, or how they want it, like you said, 2 years in a row, etc. Keep that in mind. That's the beautiful thing of AMBUCS, is that it's not set in stone that every chapter is exactly the same.
I think something else that's important, when I took over the Owasso chapter, because we had a president and then he kept trying to cancel all the meetings and then he ended up quitting. And I got a phone call saying, oh, our chapter is going to fold. And I was like, no, it's not. And I drove 2 hours to run those meetings. And I didn't know what I was doing. I will be the first to tell you, I had no clue what I was doing. I was a fairly new AMBUC, but I felt comfortable calling people that I had met. The men's chapter, I was calling people from Enid. And I don't know that some of the members from AMBUCS really understand how important it is to actually go to conferences, to meet people, to get the ideas, to build the relationships, because it really was what helped me make it through that year. And then the next year I was the president of the Charity Angels. I mean, it was just, you know, one of those things that I felt like, had I not had all of that, I probably wouldn't have done it. And if I didn't have it all and I did it, heck, they might have fallen apart anyway, because I didn't know what I was doing.
Gary, do you have something you want to say?
What do you think is the major reason why members do not want to become officers or are reluctant at becoming officers?
I think a lot of times that sometimes that's our own fault as officers in the current position, because one, you can't go up there and just say how stressful the job is. So we have to be careful what we say, because we may be stressed out over the position, but there's also other stuff in our life that is stressing us. So it's not necessarily, oh my gosh, the treasurer's job is stressing me out. I just hit April 15th deadline. So, you know, we have to be careful how we say that. And then sometimes control, just making sure that, oops, I want to keep that control, or maybe, and again, just the fact of not making it sound like it can be fun, not so much a job. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I think it's different for different people why they don't want to be an officer, though. Some of them, they may not have self-esteem, or they're super shy or introverted. They may not have the confidence, and maybe they've never ever been in any type of leadership position. And so those people, you may have to like start them off small and put them in charge of a small event until they have confidence, or make sure that they have a co-chair or somebody to help them.
And remember, we all have a lot on our plates, whether it's AMBUCS work, so life in general. If you have somebody in your chapter that has a lot on their plate, or you think they may have a lot on their plate, pull them aside or take them out for a drink or something and have a talk. Find out what else going on in their life and ask if they need you to help take some weight off the plate. Don't just automatically go, well, I just think you're so stressed and you just look like you're going 90 to nothing. I just want to take this off your plate for you. Because eventually the way you're doing it makes it sound like I'm taking this from you, whether you want me to or not. So, you know, you want to kind of be careful how you do that, because otherwise you may burn that bridge with that person and it's going to take a while to build it back. So don't just automatically think that because they're stressed or look stressed, that it's all the job of AMBUCS, because it's not always the case. But make sure that they want some help with what's on their plate and don't just take it. I mean, if they're doing it flat out wrong, then yeah, we got issues. We need to talk. But if there's no issues and everything's going well.
So Gary, when I joined AMBUCS, I actually told several people that I would never be president. I'm never going to do anything because my job is so intense and I manage all these people and I'm in charge. Why would I want to go and be in charge at this nonprofit that I'm joining? I'm going so that I can help people and so that I can have fun. And here I am. You know, so that there's another, stop laughing, Donna. There's another reason why someone wouldn't want to, but I will tell you that I was not voted back on to the board this year. And I was happy, to be honest with you, because it's just one less thing on my plate and it's another opportunity for someone else to learn. And so I get to sit back and help with Amtrikes and start our newsletter back up.
I think having good social relationships, like you and Christina were saying, does help, though. I think sometimes when we give the delivery of what the job description is, it's that, well, you got to be sure to take good notes for the minutes and you got to be sure to file the 990. Like, it just sounds very intimidating. And it's important that you bring those things up because they do have to be done. But if you feel like you've got that socialization, you've got that support from a group, that makes it a little less intimidating, I think. And maybe we just need to work on how we deliver the overall job. Instead of describing the job, describe why they would be good at the job so that they can have some confidence in what they can bring to the table.
And keeping in mind that, again, we're all volunteers. So if one month they don't do as good a job, we can't chastise them because they didn't do as good a job, because that can bring them down, because there's always going to be something going on. And so I think we have to keep that in mind as well. Now, if they're just not coming to any of your board meetings, etc., and you've got to have that person there, sure. But I think there's a point that, again, we are volunteers. Any more questions, Gary, on that?
No, I'll tell you my story from years ago. I was a basketball referee up until about 3 or 4 years ago. So crowds didn't bother me. People didn't bother me. Yeah, I was cussed and yeah, people yelled, but I didn't have a problem being in public or representing our chapter. So I went ahead and joined Toastmasters. And this was about 6 months before I was to be vice president, which leads, or is supposed to lead in our club, to president. And I didn't want to be or appear as a buffoon, especially for an organization like AMBUCS, whose primary purpose is to raise money for our volunteer organization. And I felt like my skills as a president, whether it's to be interviewed on TV, radio, newspaper, I wanted to make sure that I represented our organization. And so I joined Toastmasters, another volunteer organization. Of course, both the organizations are volunteer, and you can make it whatever you want to be. So the October before the June officer installation, I had already taken enough weekly Toastmaster meetings to know how to conduct a meeting. And if I was going to be president, to get the people needed to be in position to make our organization the best it could be. Well, after our installation banquet, the next week, the incoming president quit. And I'll say quit in the sense that I still hate her for that, because her husband got a job in St. Louis and took our president away. So I got to be the now incoming president, and I appreciate the ability that Toastmasters taught me to be able to present without saying ums and ahs. And it was a safe place because everybody in the club, the Toastmaster Club, was in a situation where it was a safe laboratory to fail, or we could practice anything we wanted to do in as far as speeches or presentations and get immediate feedback of someone else's opinion if they were sitting in the audience of what that feedback was to be. And for me, that helped. The downside was I finished her year of being president, and then the smartasses in the room said, well, that was your vice president year. Now you get to be president for your year. So in a arm twisting type of way, I got to be president for 2 years and found out I really need to be in a position to where they couldn't give me a third year or a future year as president. So I can highly recommend not only Toastmasters, but also AMBUCS, because it provides us the vehicle to be a better leader. And sometimes all you need to do is to be a better speaker and in presenting the things for Toastmasters as well as AMBUCS. But you can get your feet too deep into AMBUCS and to Toastmasters. So for me, that worked out perfectly, and I've yet to turn away or repel people who want to be either
Good deal. Good deal. Anybody else have a story or anything they want to add? Because I know I want to make sure that any of you that just jumped on later, make sure you get all your questions answered. But I don't want to keep you forever tonight. So Kathleen, Judith, and James, you feel a little bit better, Brenda?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Go ahead, James.
Said yes, ma'am. Thank you for all the info.
Yeah. And I think, like it was said earlier too, the more that you can come to regional conferences and national conferences too, you get to hear everybody's chapter stories, and then you see personalities and not just the narrow part of what you're seeing in your own chapter. And that allows you, especially Kathleen, when you were talking about Big Hat, it allows you to see, oh, I can do something different. I don't have to, I didn't see this going on. And hey, we could do this. And what fits the personalities in your chapter and those members that you have. And yes, like Gary said, the best tool is definitely having an agenda, having that out. And there is an example agenda in the literature that we have. Use that to start with. And then each chapter has one a little bit different. And like Christina said, have it typed up, have it saved. If you want to add or change it a little bit each time, but you don't have to start from scratch every meeting. Jessica, you have anything else you want to add?
No, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a good chat. Gary, I was in Toastmasters for probably 5 years before I came to AMBUCS. Never knew it was a service club until I came to AMBUCS. our group just didn't operate that way, but
Cool. All right. Anybody have any last questions or comments before we say goodbye? All righty. Well, we appreciate all y'all being here, and if you do have any other questions, or as you're mentoring anybody, please make sure you reach out to any of us that can help too, because that's what we're here for too. If you've got a Big Cat question, if you've got a chapter question, I mean, that's what we're here to do. And we want to make sure it's easier for each of you. And if you hear another chapter struggling too, that's what we want to make it easier for them. And I guess we